Hello my sewing friends. As you know, there are so many different ways of raffling or shearing materials. The shearing with an elastic thread I showed you a couple of days ago in a video. Because on that, with the elastic thread, the idea is to keep the actual seam elastic. But the other way to do one, if you don't have to have an elastic seam, you can do a nice ruffle job. I got this prepared here for you, and it's very easy, and even starters, learners that haven't done so much sewing can do this really nice and easy. So watch it now. Here we go. I'll demonstrate this ruffle job to you with those two pieces of material. I put 2 marks in this particular one because that is the length that I would like to ruffle this blue material into. So what you have to do, first of all, take the material that you want to do the ruffle on. If it's a very, very long part that you have to ruffle, you leave in the beginning the threads hanging for pulling them in, and at the end. On a shorter piece like this, it's easier if you start by holding the stitch with a back and forth stitching with your machine. So let's take the case. Your seam that you're going to be sewing when you put this together will be 1 centimeter. Therefore, your first stitching along here now will be 7 or 8 millimeters, just a little bit less than your actual seam is going to be. Put the length of your stitch from your machine on the longest that you have. So on approximately 7-8 millimeters, you're holding the thread first of all, and with the longest stitch, as mentioned before, you just go all the way along your material. At the end, you do not cut the thread off directly, you pull it out because you will need this in a moment. Now, before you start pulling this, you have to make another one. This next line that you're sewing along will have to be approximately 4 to 5 millimeters next to your first seam. So again here, you're holding the thread, because later on you will have to stitch right in between those two. So go along on approximately 4 millimeters with your very big stitch, and also here at the end pull it out so you have some threads left over. For raffling this now, there is different sayings. Some people, they say always take the upper thread. Other people say always take the under thread that you will pull now. Well, quite right, this is not, in general you cannot say this, because it all depends on the tension of your threads on your sewing machine. As an example, if your upper thread is much more tightened than your bottom thread, that means you might be even to see this, that on some of your stitchings you can see the bottom thread slightly to be pulled up. You cannot see this on mine because mine is perfect. So that means if your upper thread pulls the bottom one a little bit up, then you should use the upper thread. But it will be exactly the opposite way around in case if your bottom shows the upper thread a little bit. That means your bottom thread is much tighter, then you would use the bottom thread to pull. Now in my case I explain it totally different to you, as I am using for this kind of job definitely for the upper thread a slightly thicker thread. So my upper thread is now Stärke. What is Stärke in English? The thickness of the thread is a 70, and my bottom one is 120. It's much thinner. So I show you when I put those next to each other. You can see that's the thin one, that's the thick one from the top, and here the same. That's the bottom one, that's the top one. So I will now pull on the thicker thread. That is always the best thing to do. So I just take those two and never pull them singly. You have to pull them now both at the same time, because that gives it the evenness of the pulling. So hold these very firm and just pull a little bit in first before you check the first time how much you have to pull in. You can see I'm not there yet where I want to be. So first of all, I pull this about to that length. Now even it out a little bit already, but the main evening out I do after I held it under the machine. So I put this onto my cut where I want to start this ruffle job, and I stitch right in the middle between those two to just hold my material in position, because now it's so easy. Again, I just take my two upper threads. I have to divide them first again. Yep, that's it. Now I got my two upper threads, my thick yarn. And by holding this, and the machine is holding it in that position, I can now even out my ruffles very even and perfectly the way I'd like it. Of course, you can spend a lot of time on this by thinking, oh, I need a little bit more there, I need a little bit less there. Do it until you're satisfied with your evening this ruffling out, and keep looking where you want to go to. Because of this, you might have there too much, so you pull it a little bit more up towards the other end. As I said, until you're satisfied with your own job right here. So why this is so important with these two threads, if you're looking exactly here, you can see that now the width of the material is really evened out. And if I stitch now through this middle, I will not get any creases in anywhere. So just take your time, go right through the middle, which is then your centimeter seam that you allowed from the way beginning on. Right through the middle. And at the end, you go back and forth. Okay, but now you might say, I got a seam there now showing. Well, of course, but you're just going to pull that out now. There's no problem, because it's so easy to pull this out. You just cut there the thread through, take it at this other end, and just pull it out. You can do the same with the first one that you put in, but most important is you take that one out as well. And now you can see the result of your job that you've done. That it's so easily, this looks beautiful as an example for some children clothes to do. It's beautiful for a sleeve. You can think of it. There's so many different things that you can do with this, and it's just nice, and it's really easy, and it comes out so well. I wish you much luck with your first try on this particular ruffle technique.